Hi, everyone. The purpose of this lecture is to talk about the exams in the course on Introduction to African History. The midterm and the final. There are two exams in this course. Just want to give you some information that hopefully will help you prepare for and do well on the exams. There is in the course a midterm and a final. The final is not comprehensive. That means that the information covered from the midterm on is the only that's all the information you will see or be responsible for on the final. On both exams, the midterm and the final, there will be two kinds of questions. There will be several identification essays. This is where you will see a term and will be given some instructions to write an essay on that term. This is more than a short answer question. This is not just a give me the definition of this term essay either. Okay, so I will explain what an identification essay is in a couple of minutes here, go over some of the details about that. There will also be a long essay. This is, a standard 4 to 5 paragraph essay. It's kind of what I'm looking for. And the long essay will be worth more than the identification essays. Always, no matter if you're writing an identification essay or writing a long essay, the emphasis should be on your analysis of the historical situation, the person, the event, the whatever it is from the historical time period in question, and you should make connections between whatever it is you're talking about and the historical context. This is what I'm looking for. This is not just regurgitating factual information. This is about doing critical analysis. All right, so hopefully you've gotten enough of a sense of that from the classes, have an idea what that means. But really, I want to see you thinking about the terms and the issues, and coming to some opinion of your own about what it all means. Identification essays should be 1 paragraph long. This paragraph should be substantial. A couple of sentences does not constitute a paragraph. I suppose it does technically, but for these kinds of essays, you're going to need substantially more than that. In the instructions on the exam, you will see that I'm asking you to do 3 things in each of these essays. And again, there will be several identification terms on the exam. You have to write essays on multiple identification terms. So there are 3 parts to this paragraph. First is a definition of the term itself. Okay, this should be a thorough definition. Should include as much information as you possibly can about the term, what it is, who was involved with it, what time period it comes from, geographic context it comes from, and so forth and so on. Okay, so as thorough a definition as you can, but that's only the beginning. All right, I have a lot of students who write, these identification terms, both in this class and some of the other classes I teach, and they think, okay, well, I've given a definition of this. That must be all that I need to do. That's only the first part of it, and it's really not even the most important part of it. More important would be, or the most significant, probably the longest part of your essay should be the part about context. You need to place this term in its broader context. The term itself is like a peg to hang a larger picture on. Okay, that broader picture is the full historical context of the term. You should include in this discussion of the context as much specific detail as you possibly can. Talking generally about it is one thing, but if you give specific details, examples, other sort of examples of this thing you're talking about, again, connections with other if the term is a person, you're going to make connections maybe with other people or important historical trends, and again, specific detail as much as you can fit in there. And so, your definition should be, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 sentences maybe. The context should, again, be at least that much, if not more, right? So, say the term is, I'm just pulling one out of the air here, Shaka Zulu. That is one of the identification terms that you might see on the exam. You would not only need to define who Shaka Zulu was and what he did, but you would also need to place him in the broader context of the 19th century in Africa, talking about the movements of peoples. You need to get into some details about the Mfecane, which Shaka Zulu sort of inspired or prompted. You need to draw in discussion of other peoples who were involved in these same trends. Talk about the Voortrekkers in South Africa, for instance, right? So all of that is contextual detail. And then finally, you need a closing sentence or two that gives a statement of significance, okay? I realized, so I'm going to actually modify this on the fly here. But the statement of significance may proceed along a couple of different lines, all right? One of those possibilities for determining the significance of the term is the impact that had over time. A second is to think about this term as representative of broader historical trends. Okay, so let me go back to the show here, right? So you need to, and this is really your opinion. This is critical analysis. Okay. Why is this term important? Well, one, it may have an impact over time. Now, in doing that, I have seen more essays than I can count that, say, and this had a huge impact over time, or it continues to affect us today, or something like that, right? That is not really an answer, okay, because it doesn't give any reason why it continues to impact over time or spell out what that impact is or anything like that, right? If you just say, and this still affects Africa today, that really doesn't mean anything. You need to talk about how it affects Africa, how that is reverberated over time, right? So resist the urge to simply say, this is still important today, all right? Especially if this is something that happened many, many centuries ago or something like that. The impact probably on today's Africa is almost certainly negligible. Okay, maybe there, but you would need to trace that impact. A second way to approach, and this is not mutually exclusive, by the way. In the statement of significance, you could talk both about the impact over time and how it's representative of broader historical trends. So we've identified in the course some important historical trends. Okay. And hopefully you can name some of those. All right, we've talked, for instance, in Intro to Africa about geography and how people have interacted with the geography of the continent, right? And so for a term, you could say this is representative of the ways that Africans have used the geography of their region to, form their own unique societies or something like that, right? That's just off the top of my head an example of, something you could say about how a term is representative of broader historical trends. So you need to identify the historical trend and then make a link between this term and that historical trend. Always err on the side of thorough. Be as thorough as you possibly can with these essays. This is, again, not a short answer, not a basic definition. This is much more, it's a more comprehensive kind of thing that I'm looking for here. Now, the long essay, and there will only be one long essay that you have to write on the exam, okay? There are two types of questions that I ask for the long essay. And really, they're the same type of question, they just approach almost from opposite directions. All right, the first of these is a compare and contrast question. Now, realize that means you have to identify both similarities and differences in two things that I'm giving you, or maybe multiple, more than two things that I'm giving you, right? In what ways are these things similar, and in what ways are they different, and more importantly, why are they different, right? Really, the long essay is a why question, and you should treat it as a why question, which means you need to come up with an explanation for why people did things the way they did, why the historical situations took shape the way they did. A second type of long essay question will be an argue for or against the following statement question, and then I will give you a statement, right? Now in these, and as I said, this is really the same kind of question, it's just approaching it from the opposite direction. So in a compare and contrast question, you want to come up with factors, historical factors that made it so that multiple things were the same and or different, right? So explaining why the similarities and differences are there, okay? In an argue for against the following statement, I, as the author of the exam, will give you a factor or two and ask you to determine whether that factor is a valid one or not. Okay. Now, by the way, in an argue for against the following statement question, your response can be more than just yes or no. In other words, yes, I agree, or no, I disagree. You can agree or disagree by degrees, as it were. That is, you can say, well, this statement is mostly valid, but there are these other factors that are also important, and then you would need to, of course, say something about those factors. Or you could say, this statement is, I mostly disagree with this, but there are these other factors. This is an important factor in this situation, right? And so, it's not all or nothing. This is not a zero-sum game, okay? You don't have to say, yes, this statement is absolutely valid 100%, or no, it's absolutely invalid 100%. You can nuance that to some extent and say, yes, this is a good statement, but it doesn't take into account everything, or no, this is for the most part not a valid statement, but it does have some merit because of this and this, right? Now, in those cases, of course, you would need to spell out what is more important, or what is, what other factors are important. So, don't say that and not treat it, as it were. These essays will be on the major themes of the course, the major historical trends, and they will include comparisons across regions of Africa, or between different time periods in Africa, or some other defined contrasting things, okay? So that there will be enough information for you to construct an essay. Components of a good long essay. There should be a clear introduction. This doesn't have to be absolutely the most scintillating thing you've ever written necessarily. I understand this is an exam, right? Not a perfectly polished essay. But you should introduce the topic, and most importantly, toward the end of your introduction, you should give a strong, clear thesis. Your thesis will be something to do, if it's in a compare and contrast question, an explanation for why things are the same and why they're different. In an argue for against the following statement question, it will be, your answer to that question. Yes, I agree with this. No, I don't agree with it. Yes, I agree with this, but there are other factors. No, I don't agree with this for the most part, but there is some merit to it, right? This needs to be stated clearly. Now, it probably is a good idea as well to give some little plan of organization, so that I, as the reader and the grader, by the way, will be able to know where you're going with this. If I get to the end of an introductory paragraph and I have no idea what you're trying to say, you're in trouble, okay? You may have evidence and stuff, but you have to have an argument. I have to know where this essay is going. And then body paragraphs with Strong topic sentences that advance the thesis. In other words, the first sentence of every paragraph really has to count. I have to see, you making progress on demonstrating what you're trying to argue, right? And then included in those body paragraphs, specific evidence and specific, not just talking generally, but specific nouns, specific persons, places, or things that contribute to the argument you're trying to make, and then explanations for why the evidence does back up what you're arguing, right? This is evidence-based argument. Hopefully you have heard that term and understand what it means, and you're ready to do it effectively. And then finally, a conclusion where essentially you restate what you've said, sort of sum up your essay. This doesn't, again, have to be the most profound thing you've ever written, but you should have some kind of conclusion where you draw everything together. All right. So hopefully that gives you an idea what you need to do on this exam, and that when you see the questions, you don't freak out. You have a good sense of what you have to do in order to write this effectively and do well. If you have specific questions about this, feel free to email me, bring it up in discussion boards, whatever it is. I'm not going to give you the answers at any point to the questions, but I might be able to clarify some things if there are still some sort of outstanding issues that aren't perfectly clear at this point.